We are honored to have Mr. Chau with us today. Mr. Chau is a partner of Strong States and SciTech advisor of Why Not Foundation. Mr. Chau is going to elaborate legal issues for startup tech companies. Let's give Mr. Chau a big warm hand.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. So, I don't need to introduce myself again. I'm Chau. I am a lawyer by profession. I specialize in working on business transactions, including capital markets transactions, mergers, acquisition, investment, that type of work. So I don't do litigation. If you want litigation, we have our litigation lawyers, Daniel, here today. So you see my WeChat account and also WhatsApp, so feel free to scan it in case you have any questions you want to ask me after that. So feel free to scan that. I will give you a few seconds. Okay, time's up. Okay, so I will start with 3 common myths about law that is commonly shared by startup companies. First of all, startup don't need lawyers. Some people will say, only large corporation needs to ensure legalities of the operation. Well, we're a startup, why bother with legalities? We are still at a very early stage. We don't have any profit anyway. Do you agree? Anyone agree? Ronnie? You agree? Why?
I guess if there are a lot of procedures you have to follow, just live for knowledge, that's
You're right. You see, startup, first of all, a company, no matter how big or small it is, should not violate law. The rights and obligations of the startup founders have to be clearly defined and agreed at early stage. Otherwise, you will face big problems in the future. Also, startup will sign contracts with external parties from time to time. So they are legally binding obligations. So you need to know what rights you enjoy and what obligations you assume before putting down your signature. So we just talk about that case because the boss doesn't engage lawyers, so sign something and then he will face the music. Also, you need to ensure your fruit of your hard work are protected. You will also need to ensure you have not infringed other people's rights. Therefore, you need lawyers to assist you all along your growth at every stage. We lawyers help you to get things done in a lawful manner while controlling risk. That gives you two examples. Well, people are willing to spend money to pay the doctors if he or she got cancer. But if you can spend some money to do the body check every year, that can cure the problem. And then the total amount of money you spend with body check will be much lesser than one needs to pay the bill of the doctor if one gets cancer. So some people, if they put too bothered about it's too expensive, I just choose the cheapest plan for the body check, and that will be another problem. And there's also a Chinese saying, 一子錯滿盤皆落錯. One wrong move can lead to a total defeat. So if you sign the contract that impose very onerous obligations on you, and then the whole business would have been failed. Or you fail to protect the most important intellectual property of the company, that the company will fail, for sure. Myth number 2, lawyers are human equivalents of vampires. Well, lawyers will bleed your resources dry and leave you with nothing but a host of incomprehensible legal jargon and a heavy bill. What do you think? Let me ask another question. Daniel,
Depends on which firm you choose. Yes, choose the right firm and make sure that you know the terms of the engagement letter from the beginning and have a reliable lawyer that you go to. Then your deal will be manageable.
Okay. Well, look at this. Some years ago, I had attended a private party, and then I met Chong Xiaogang, a very well-known movie director in China. And then after a few glasses of alcohol, Mr. Feng said to me, 周律师，律师是对我们电影行业很重要的，但是我都听不懂律师讲什么。所以呢，我们能做的只能找到一个可信的律师，然后去相信他的话。In English, I would say lawyers is very important to the film industry, but we do not exactly understand what lawyers say. The only thing we can do is to have a trustworthy lawyer and then trust what he says. Well, frankly, I think just as Daniel said, we cannot get some truth in the myth because there are some lawyers who are really vampires, I have to say. And also legal services are not cheap at all, just like all the professional services. However, there are lawyers who understand the special needs of startup and can offer value for money services. So that is the solution. And myth number 3, all lawyers are the same. Do you agree? Shelly?
It really depends again on which kind of entity and personality and also from culture. There are professional ones and someone that's not that professional.
You're right. So, give me another example. So if someone not feeling well, so you may ask a friend to recommend doctors, right? Because you don't know which doctor to talk to, and you also know some doctors are better than the others. So it's the same for lawyers. So, well, as a misguided effort to save legal costs, some startup may hire inexperienced lawyers. For example, those are friends of the founders, of the relatives, or those who offer very deep discount. By doing so, founders will deny themselves the advice of competent and experienced lawyers who can help to avoid many legal problems, and thus money of the startup. You will end up spending more in the future to kill the problem than to spending it now. So today you're very lucky. You're getting free lunch today. You're getting free advice from a seasoned business lawyer who has more than 20 years of solid experience from advising large corporations, startup and financial institutions. Who is that person? He is this person. So these are some of my old photos. I speak very regularly at different forums, conferences, and then sometimes be interviewed by media. Also as an advisor of Why Not, because Chairman Andy is very generous. Although he didn't pay me legal fees, but he also, from time to time, he invited me to have a very big meals. Including tonight, I will have a big feast with him tonight. So that's why I need to do something in order to discharge my duties. And last summer, I had the opportunity to moderate one of the signature event of the foundation, which is the Greater Bay Area Deep Tech Forum. This year, there was one just held a few months ago. So do keep an eye on the on Why Not Foundation. You will get a lot from them. So now we goes to our agenda today. This is your menu for the free lunch day. These are 10 topics I'm going to cover. First of all, the relationship among founders, company formation, choice of company name, PRBO financing, getting the required permits and licenses, employment issues, intellectual property issues, data securities and data protection issues, key things before signing contract and IPO. First of all, I need to give some credit to my colleagues, Donna and Natalie. They have helped me with preparing these slides. So, I'm not sure if you have watched this social network movie. That talks about the dispute between the two founders of Facebook. In short, the controlling shareholder, Mark, tried to introduce some new investors to the company because the other founders know nothing about law, so there was a legal provision under the contract that there's no anti-dilution rights. So if he doesn't contribute money to the company for future development, his shares will be diluted to a very low percentage. I think that is a real story. So the lesson from that is founder dispute can destroy an early stage venture, therefore, and has to be handled with care, diligence, and wisdom from legal advisor. So if you want to set up a business with your friends, or even with your siblings, or whoever, business is business, friendship is friendship, family is family. So we need to have all these relationships agreed among all the co-founders before you start doing the business. Otherwise, there will be dispute in the future for sure. These are some of the key elements I would like to draw your attention to. First of all, on the ownership of the equity, you need to set out very clearly the respective financial contribution of each founder, whether someone will contribute any existing IP rights or innovation to the company instead of contributing money. So who is going to manage the business, who is going to contribute to management skills. The capitalization table means you need to set out the number of shares and also the percentage of shares of each founder very clearly. So if one of the founders is lending money to the company, so better to have a loan agreement to set out the rights and obligation and agree in advance when the company will pay it back to him or whether there will be any interest incurred. Of course, rewards and compensation. Well, we have contributed our efforts to the company. So what are you going to get? Whether we're getting some extra shares in the future, or whether we'll just do it for free. So that has to be agreed. Transfer of shares, we talk about that in the movie. Whether any founder can transfer the shares freely. That is to say whether they have a lockup. That is they cannot transfer the shares until something happens. Or if you want to introduce some new shareholders to the company, whether there's any anti-dilution right, that is to your percentage maybe from 60% to 40% because someone contribute extra new money to the company. Rights of first refusal. So if one wants to transfer the shares, whether the other shareholders will have the rights to buy the shares before one can sell to the external parties. So if you want to quit, there will be co-sell rights. That's something you need to think about that. I'm not going to talk about this in detail, but you need to think about what's going to happen if someone, new shareholders join, and what happens if someone is going to quit. And if these things happen, we need to have the formula to decide the valuation of shares because the company is not a listed company. So it's just a piece of paper. So how can you determine the value of the shares? So there should be some methodology to determine. So we have an accountant here. So Johnny can give you some advice on valuation. Corporate governance. The board of directors of the company, who is going to be members of the board, how can that person be appointed and removed? The nomination rights. So if you just want to contribute money, so would you want someone to be your nominee in the board to oversee the company, to make sure that the working directors that they are not doing something very badly? What are the responsibilities and obligations of the management? How frequent the board meeting should be organized? What is the quorum? Who can vote? Are there any matters that has to be agreed by all the directors before a resolution can be passed? About the shareholders meeting, what matters has to be agreed among the shareholders? So these are all very complicated matters. So don't think that's so easy. We're just 2 friends or 3 friends of a company, and then I'm sure if the company is facing problem, there will be dispute. If the company is doing very well, there will be dispute as well. Intellectual properties. So if someone, I just mentioned, someone may have a scientist that he doesn't want to contribute cash because he doesn't have a lot of cash, but he has the innovation. He contributes the innovation to the company. So we need to make sure that IP rights are clearly assigned to the company, and also the valuation, how much that IP rights would worth. So that has to also be agreed before. Confidentiality, make sure that no one can leak out confidential information and trade secret of the venture to external parties. Dispute resolution, so what happened if there's any dispute among the shareholders? So it will get worse if there are 2 shareholders, 2 of them are 50-50, so who is the boss, who is not the boss? So there has to be, this kind of backlog situation has to be resolved. And then liquidation preferences means whether someone can get the money out of the company first in case of the liquidation. On exit arrangement, if a founder is going to leave the company, and then we need to make sure that he will not set up another company doing similar business to compete with us. Also, need to make sure that he cannot solicit our employees to his own new company. So this arrangement has to be agreed. So I will stop here, and then I think this will be some kind of eye-opening experience to all of you, and then I can assure you this will worth you more than 2 million Hong Kong dollars. Company's formation. So if you want to start a business, we would strongly suggest you set up a separate company, because that would be a means to separate your personal assets and the company assets. So if a business owner fails to clearly delineate between the companies and his personal asset, upon commencement of legal action by a third party, the court may please the corporate well and then hold him or her personally liable for the debts of the company. This is the common structure for listed company in Hong Kong. So you would say the founder A and B assume they are 2 founders. They are individual. Normally, these individuals, they do not hold the shares of the listed company directly. They will set up a BVI holding vehicle and then use it as a holding company, as the immediate shareholder of the listed company. And for some tax issue, we will have also layers of companies after the listed company before the Chinese operating company. So this is the common structure of a listed company in Hong Kong. Choose of company's name. Well, it is very important because the company name will represent the image or the brand of your business. So you need to choose the right name. And the company name, in fact, is an intangible asset of the company. And then it can be built into the trademark of the product. The company name is a brand, just like Jones Day is a brand. Also, goodwill. People will talk about the company's name. That would mean it's a trustworthy name. So we give you some recommendation. First of all, before you set up the company, you think of a name. Better to check whether there's someone share the same will as you who has already registered the name of the company with the same name. So you better have the same company name with another company. Otherwise, well, you may be sued by them. Make sure that the trademark does not infringe any existing trademark. So do a trademark search with the trademark registry in Hong Kong. The company will have a domain name, so also do a domain name search to make sure that you can use the domain name that you want. Avoid choosing some confusing name. Otherwise, people or the outsider do not know what exactly you are doing. And then avoid some names that will limit your business growth. Because if you say you do a battery business, you call your company ABC Battery Company. So that means you can only do battery business. But if you, in the future, the business grow a lot, and then you can have a business opportunity to do electric vehicles. So this is related to that, but if your name is just a battery, so that means people will say, well, how come a battery company can produce an auto? So that will limit your business growth. So if you need to set up a new company, so you may not be able to leverage on the brand and goodwill of the company. So before you decide on your name, think about it. Cannot be too generic, but cannot be too specific. So there should be a third way in the middle. Now I'll give you an example. Well, this is a UK case. Zara, I'm sure you know Zara is a fast fashion brand globally. They claim that the House of China is conceptually similar to them, and they claimed that there was a high degree of visual and oral similarities between the two brands that will lead customer to confuse. And the UK Trademark Tribunal gave a ruling that they do not believe that there was any mental link between the customers of Zara and this House of China. And that would be too insubstantial and fitting to result in an exploration of Zara's reputation. So China won the case. We talked about doing business. Of course, doing business has to, you need to have money in order to do business. So either you do it yourself. If you're very rich, this is okay. But even some people which they are not willing to do business, to finance the business entirely by themselves because they want to diversify the risk. So sometimes we need to talk to external investors and invite them to invest in your company. So these are very common ways of doing so-called PRPO investment. That is an IPO, an investment of a company before its IPO. So that is to invest in a private company, not a public company. So there are three common approach. Either you subscribe for shares of the company. The shares can be ordinary shares, which is voting rights and also rights to dividend. But also some people would want to have the preferred shares. That is to say, the preferred, in case of the liquidation of the company, holder of preferred shares can get the money back. But frankly speaking, this is just academic difference, because normally if the company needs to go into liquidation, it doesn't mean the company is on the rock. There's no money to give it back to you. So the priority is just academic. You feel happier that you, in theory, you get the money first, but in reality, in liquidation, very likely you get nothing anyway. Facility agreement is to provide a loan to the company with interest rates or other rights. And because the loan is a loan, the company has to repay the loan back to the debtors. But as a shareholder, the company does not need to pay back the shares to the shareholder. So there are some more creative way of doing that. That is a convertible loan agreement. That you say, we provide a loan to the company. So if something happens, the loan can be converted into shares. So that would give you some kind of protection that in theory, you're still a debtor of the company. So in case the company is in financial difficulties, you can sue the company and then request for the company to pay the money back to you if the company still has money. So now I talk about these rights of PRO investors. In case someone is willing to invest into your company, so what else that person would get? Apart from the shares, which is a piece of paper, so very likely the investors will request for some rights to protect themselves, like in preference shares, the preference shareholders will request for the shares be converted into ordinary shares at the time of an IPO. Corporate governance, because they give the money to you, they need to make sure that the company is run properly. So they would likely request for information rights. That is, you need to provide the say financials and the bank the accounts to the investors on say a quarterly or half yearly basis. They have the inspection rights. So if they believe that something wrong has happened in the company, they can send a team of auditors to the company to check the financials. They may have the right to appoint a director to the board to make sure that all these things are discussed and passed properly. If they won't want to have a director, they may have a board observer, that is to just come, because the directors have some legal duties, so observers would be better to some of the investors because they don't want to assume liability of the company. So anti-dilution, we have talked about that. Then you say, I invest into a company and I don't want you to have some other new investors coming in the future and then provide additional money to the company and then to divert our shareholding of the company. Protection of investment. So in case anything happened, for example, the company failed to conduct an IPO in the future, say within 3 years, the investors may request for shares be redeemed so that he get the money back. Co-sell rights, that is, if the founder is selling the shares to any third party, they can have the right to sell the shares as well. Liquidation preference means the priority in getting the money back. So we have talked about that. Dividend, and also the most favored nation treatment, that you say, so I give you this investment, in case in the future someone comes to invest in the company, give you more favored term, I will automatically be assumed the rights of the new investors. So this is the MFN treatment. All these special rights for a Hong Kong IPO has to be terminated before the listing, and then no rights would be able to enjoy after the IPO. Now we go to another topic, which is intellectual the permits and licenses. So as I said at the outset of this course, we say all the companies, no matter how big or how small it is, has to comply with law. So before you commence business, you need to check, well, what jurisdictions are you going to operate? Only in Hong Kong, or in mainland China, or in US, or in Europe. So there are local legislation, so you need to ensure that all the local legislation are complied with. So you need to consider what are the required licenses, permits, or approval for the operation in order to do business in that jurisdiction. In Hong Kong, the requirement is relatively loose. For most of the business, general business registration with the Inland Revenue Department would be required only, unless you are running an aircraft company or you're running TVB, you need to get some special permit, or you run a bank or run a financial institution. But for most of the companies, you don't need any, in particular for the tech company, you do not need any specific licenses in order to for the commencement of the business. So what happens if you do the business without having those licenses? So of course, some people will not give you the opportunity to bid for good opportunities because you need to make sure that you can do that. Well, if you are being sued, you will have fine or penalties, or even arrest by the police. In that case, your operation, your reputation will be affected. You will face lawsuit because if you sign a contract with an external third party saying that, oh, I can do this business, but in fact you don't have the license, the other people will sue you for the loss. Your operation may be forced to be ceased. Also, in case you are doing an IPO in the future, any non-compliance will need to be disclosed in the listing document. And then all these materials non-compliance may affect your suitability for listing. So I'm not scaring you, but there's a case this is a public case. There's a construction industry service provider which undertook some projects which exceed the permitted scope of qualifications, and the operating subsidiaries did not comply with the work safety licenses requirement shortly before the date of the prospectus. Well, these things has to be disclosed to the stock exchange, and then the stock exchange decided that this company is not suitable for listing because they said the directors are aware of such non-compliance, but it continued to enter into new contract, knowing that there's a breach. So that would be integrity issue of the founders and the directors. And also the directors are fully aware of the breach of the work safety licenses requirement, but still continue to carry on the work. So those directors, they are not suitable to be a director. Now we talk about these employment issues. Before we talk about employment issue, let me drink some water. The key legislation in Hong Kong on employment issues is an employment ordinance. It applies to every employees engaged under contract of employment of Hong Kong, with a few exceptions. So in Hong Kong, although people say that the protection of labor is not that strong, but we believe that the range of protection is quite comprehensive, from wage protection, we have the holidays, you have the annual leave, you have the sick leave, maternity protection, supplements payment, long service payment, and then rights to protect against anti-union discrimination. So now you are setting up your own business, you are the CEO of the company, you need to recruit people. So I would like to remind you that mind your words, because that would be quite serious. Well, I would say, although in Hong Kong this matter is not sensitive, but people are getting more and more sensitive on that. And then we have these discrimination ordinances. So you need to avoid asking inappropriate questions and interview. For example, you ask about the age of person. Well, this is quite embarrassing. Cannot ask people the child care arrangement because people will believe that, well, I'm discriminated that if I need to take care of my young kids at home, so cannot ask. Of course, you can consider that, but you cannot show people that you really care about that. You cannot ask people, you cannot pay too much emphasis on race because on some religion, there's some special arrangement you cannot eat during a particular month. So if you ask, well, how would that affect the work? That would be problematic. Disability, no need to say. The family status, whether you're married or you are separated or divorced, you should ask. The national origin can ask. Religion cannot ask. Sexual orientation cannot ask. So these are the topics that we should avoid asking publicly in the interview. Let me talk briefly about the key terms of an employment contract. So I would say you need to cover at least these issues: the job title, the role, the responsibility of the employees, because that can be in big argument. Because if the staff says that, well, according to my contract, my title is say assistant manager, but if you say nothing about the responsibility and then you ask him or her to do something, they will say, oh, this is out of the work scope. So, but what is the work scope? You haven't agreed with that. So you better have clearly defined work scope and responsibilities of the employees. We need to determine whether it's a full-time or part-time, because that will affect whether he or she will enjoy the rights under the employment ordinance. what is the commencement date. That will affect the calculation of the long service payment and substance payment in the future. What are the salaries, what benefits you have, any relocation leave, annual leave days, any bonus, any stock options, that type of thing, clearly set out. Whether this position is at will, that is to say, that can be determined anytime, or there's a fixed term that, say, a 3 years contract that we need to renew, say, every 3 years. Also, because the employees will have the opportunity to have access to a lot of confidential information to the company, and also the IP rights of the company. So we need to ensure they comply with the confidentiality obligation, sign a confidential agreement with them, asking them not to disclose this information even after you cease to be an employee of the firm. Also, the innovation, if during the course of his employment, the employment is, say, a programmer, have some very new IP program designed by it, make sure that he signed the agreement or agree at the outset in the employment agreement that all the IP rights from those innovations during his course of employment with the company will be the property of the company, not his personal assets. So even if he resigns from the company in the future, he cannot use the technology, he cannot license the technology to any third party. Also, dispute resolution cost. So whether we go to arbitration or whether we go to court in case there is any dispute between the company and the employee. In Hong Kong, we have the Mandatory Provident Fund. I don't want to cover too much on that, but just make sure that the employer will contribute the MPF for the employees. Well, in case an employee is doing very badly, you want to fire him or her, so what should you do? I give you some practical steps. First of all, you need to review your employment handbook to ensure that whether there's any existing policy of the company on this disciplinary action. So if the company, the handbook said that the business hour is from 9 to 6, so if an employee continuously leave company early or arrive company very late, so that would be a clear violation of the employee handbook, and then that will form the basis for any action you can take against the employee. And also, it would be better if you set out these detailed procedures. Say, for a minor breach, you will get, say, a verbal warning. If you get 3 verbal warnings, we'll give a written warning. And then say, if you get 2 written warnings, we will terminate your employment. So better to have this policy agreed at the outset. We will the employment letter to make sure that you know the procedures, say the notice period to give the employee. Also, we would suggest we take a progressive disciplinary approach if the misconduct is not serious. So the punishment has to be proportionate to the misconduct. You cannot say, well, if an employee steals some trade secret from the company, of course, he can be fired immediately because this is very serious. So if the staff just say late for 5 minutes, say every week, maybe 1 time per week, late for 5 minutes, if you use this excuse to fire the person, I think that would be disproportionate. So this is an example. We give some warning, of course, because we need to put things on record, because he may deny, oh, this is just my first time breaching the employee's handbook. But no, we give you a warning, say on the 2nd of May already. So record that, the warning. Even if a verbal warning, better to record that. that would be useful in the future. When the employees is going to leave the company, we do exit interview, and then we document the communication. Make sure that you do good calculation of the last paycheck. I was told that the labor department can offer this kind of services. So in order to avoid dispute, you ask labor department officer to do the calculation for you, and then that will avoid any dispute in the future. Make sure that if you fire an employee, so you revoke the access to the computer, because the information can download very quickly in a few minutes. All the trade secret or say customer list or the supplier list can be downloaded very easily. And also we need to remind the employee of the continuing obligations under the confidentiality contract, and also the invention assignment agreement that you say, well, keep your mouth shut after today. Although you're not an employee of us anymore, you cannot talk about us, you cannot leak any confidential information about the company to any third party. And also, the program you decide for company's property, don't believe that this is your property. So you cannot use it if you join another competitor. And also, last but not least, do all fact findings and investigation in anticipation of the litigation, because some employees, they have nothing to do after being fired, so they just have they want to make some trouble, and then in order to see if he can get any benefit from the company. So so that's why I suggest you have proper record, like give after verbal warning, put into a note, recording what you told the employee, the exit interview, properly record. Everything has to be properly recorded, because in case of litigation, that would be very helpful. That would be helpful to not just for you to formulate the argument, because you have all these details, and also you put those information to the lawyers, and then that could save legal costs. Employment issues, these are, well, I think I have mentioned briefly before. There's some valid reasons for dismissal, contact issue, the capacity issue. Like we are law firm, someone pretend to be a lawyer or have a fake license. Well, this is not a joke. 20 years ago, there was a very well-known lawyer in Hong Kong who is also a member of this or Legislative Council. In fact, his license is a fake license. He didn't pass the qualification exam, and then he just produced a fake qualification certificate. So that is say, if we discover the employees, if the work requires some qualification of the employees, but it finds out that the employee doesn't have that qualification, he or she can be terminated immediately. Also, redundancy is a valid reason. The unlawful dismissal, we see some examples as well. Dismissal of a female pregnant employee who has served notice of pregnancy to the employer. Well, many years ago there was a movie, a Hong Kong movie, 玉女添丁, played by Yang Qinhua. I think she wants to keep the job and then pretend that she got pregnant. And we cannot dismiss a staff on sick leave. Also, we cannot terminate the staff because he or she is a member of a trade union and is actively involved in those activities. So these are examples of unlawful dismissal. Now I want to show you another case. It is a case in Hong Kong. This case is very interesting. And then it's also another classical example of mind your language. The Equal Opportunities Commission terminate the employment of a staff called Lam But they pay them money in lieu of notice. That is, so some contract, normally in the contract, you say either party can terminate the contract by giving 1 month's notice to each other. So if I don't want to see you in that month, either party can pay 1 month's salary to each other so that the contract can be terminated immediately. That is, that's happened from time to time because if you want someone to go, you don't want that person to be in office, otherwise he will steal information from the company or say bad things about the firm or about the boss among the colleagues, and then that would have a very bad effect. So some companies just say, okay, I pay you 1 month's salary and then you go immediately. So for this case, the Equal Opportunities Commission paid the staff money and then asked the staff to go. But in the letter of termination, they say something unnecessary. They say that, well, your recent attitude and behavior does not closely match with the requirement of your senior position, which form the basis for the termination. So you don't need to say that. You just pay the money and ask to go, or even you say that, okay, but you don't be that silly to put things into writing. And then this person was so angry, and then he challenged the termination was in bad faith and not a valid reason under the opponent's ordinance. And then we went to the Labor Tribunal. The Labor Tribunal ruled in favor of Lam in her claim for damages or breaches or in part obligation for mutual trust. Well, that's very bad. You know, I already paid you the money, and then you now ask for additional money. So if I don't say these things, I will just pay you 1 month's salary, and then you go, and then things are settled. But the Equal Opportunities appealed the case to the Court of First Instance, and then the court gives this ruling. The court ruled in favor of the Equal Opportunities Commission, saying that, well, the obligations of mutual trust and confidence cannot be applied to water down the employer's rights to terminate employment of worker without cause by invoking the notice provision under contract. So that is to say the court is not concerned about the rightness of the dismissal. So just pay the money and then you better go. But even with this judgment of the Court of First Instance, these things can be avoided at the outset, right? If the HR person of the EOC was not that so silly to write too much in the letter, you don't need to spend a lot of time and effort and money to firstly go to the Labor Tribunal and then have the case appealed in high court. So this is a waste of money, but the lawyers would be happy. But this is not totally unnecessary. So I would remind founders here today, mind your words. This is something important. Even if you say something, don't put it into writing. I have become too negative by talking about termination. Now, say something positive now. That is, say how we can incentivize our employees to enable them to contribute to the success of the company. So normally, this startup company, they are not very cash sufficient. So they are not big corporations that they can pay the staff very high amounts of salary. So what else can they do? They can give the staff some hope in the future. Saying that, well, although our salary is very low now, but if you work really hard, we work together, and then we become a big company, and then you will become a shareholder of the company, and then you'll be a billionaire. Well, this is not joking. A lot of these high-tech company, those engineers, the programmer, they get these stock option from the company, the Facebook, the Google, Alibaba. They have become millionaire or billionaire because of options. So these are very useful incentive for startup company. But before you accept that, of course, I'm talking from the perspective of employee. Before you accept it, you need to make sure that you really believe that company will be successful. successful company. Otherwise, this just a piece of paper, so no use. So these are three common approach that company will be used to incentivize staff. Share option, restricted shares, and also invite you to join a platform, a shareholding platform to hold the shares together. So these are three common way. From the perspective of founders, I will tell you because these share option will dilute the shareholding of other investors. So the PRU investors will be very interested to know how many shares will be issued to employees under this PRU scheme or post-IPO scheme in order to ascertain the potential dilution of their shareholdings and whether the company has measures to incentivize and retain talents. Because if the pool is too small, that will not be good enough, attractive enough for the employees. But if the pool is too big, that would be, the company would be too generous and then investors are not happy. So how to set this, and then there has to be some kind of discussion between the founders and the investors. But normally the market practice is about from 5% to 10% would be the norm. Normally it would be less than 10%, but more than 5%. That would be sometimes 5%, sometimes 7 or 8. Highly unusual to have more than 10%. IP issues. For a tech company, I think, of course, the human capital is important, but also the technology, the IP rights are also important because you rely entirely with the IP to generate profit in the future. So there are different types of IP. So I would say your proprietary technology, the innovation. I would say this is a similar thing. The know-how is a bit loosely, but just how to manage the company, how to operate those trade secrets. These are all IP. So as I mentioned before, we need to have the confidentiality agreement with the employees, so that the employees will not disclose all the trade secret confidential information to your competitor during their employment or after their employment. And then the other concept I talk about is the innovation assignment agreement, to make sure that the employees and the independent contractor to assign the IP rights of the services to the company during the services. So all these technology innovation will become property of the company instead of the property of the individual employees. For an IPO, in particular for life science companies IPO, these IP rights is very important, so that the stock exchange require listing applicant to have a clear statement of all your material rights and obligations under this license agreement and these patent of the technology. From research to commercialization, sometimes we will want to develop the technology ourselves, but sometimes we may rely on technology of some other people, so that there will be some kind of licensing agreement. Either the company license in technology of a third party in order to help us to build our own business, or we have a good innovation, but we don't have enough money to put it into commercialize the technology. So we will license the technology out to a third party, probably some large corporation, so that they will have the resources, not only the money but also the manpower to make the company to commercialize, to put the concept into reality. So, but in return, we license your IP rights out to them. You will get some revenue from them in return. So that's why there are different modes of doing business. So these are the key range of activities in the license arrangement. So I will not go into details. These are the typical courses in the license agreement, we need to talk about the parties, the background of the transaction. The definition means what IP, what products we are licensing in or licensing out, whether the license is exclusive or not, whether I can only license it to you or whether I can license it to another person. So for a licensee, whether I can sub-license your technology to a person, that has to be agreed. So improvement of the technology, who will get the IP rights of the improvement? Compensation, what things I will get in return for licensing my product to you. Keep proper record, keep reporting, because you need to tell me how you are using our technology. So you need to tell me status report. When can that be terminated? What are the obligations that you have? So in case the technologies become very successful, whether there will be a transfer to you, the patent, any patent, this is prosecution. The term prosecution doesn't mean being sued. Prosecute is to register the patent. We call it prosecution, patent prosecution. So any patent who is going to do the prosecution work for the patent. Also, I mentioned before, dispute resolutions. Any in case someone got a loss in the exercise, so would there be any indemnity to the party? So these are typical causes of the license agreement. So this case about this RD door, so that talks about the rights of the innovation of employees during their employment. So there's a person called Brian. He pitched his idea of these big eyes doors to MGA, but at the same time, he was still employed by Mattel, which is the manufacturer of Barbie. So when he signed the consulting agreement with MGA, he informed Mattel he is going to resign. So MGA filed a claim against Mattel, saying that these new lines of Barbie with a big head and slim body was copied their design. Then Mattel argued that, well, Brian was employed by Mattel when he created the design, so Mattel owns the IP rights of such design. And the court ruled that in favor of MGA, because the judgment said that it is unclear whether the idea of new door fall within the definition of innovation as a part of the innovation assignment provision in the employment agreement. Because during the course of employment of Mattel, you are supposed to design the Mattel door. So and then the Barbie is a small head, it's not a big head. So you can say, well, this is outside course of employment. Because and when I am a staff of the company I'm designing Barbie with small head, but big head things your own business. It's nothing related to Mattel. Seems that this argument has been accepted by the court. And then the court also said, well, it is unclear whether Brian created these new doors during the scope of his employment. And also, the court believed that Mattel didn't know his own idea. So exactly what I said. So if we want to make sure that the IP rights of the company is protected, we need to make sure that the innovation agreement of the employee has to clearly draft. But you know, Mattel is a big company, but lawyers may not be good enough. Okay, data securities and data protection. That is also related to IP because in particular for some companies that heavily engage in R&D or clinical trial, there are a lot of useful data. And then we need to make sure that all those data are protected. So these are data securities. So data securities is protect our own data without being leaked to any external third party. And data protection is also two-sided. is protect our own data and also protect the data provided by external parties. Well, in Hong Kong, we have very clear rules on that. But before that, I would suggest there's every company, there's there's a privacy policy statement. Normally, that will be put on their website. You need to tell people what information will be collected, how the information will be used, whether they will be shared or transferred to third parties, and then you need to tell people that you have steps to ensure this confidentiality and security of this information collected is protected. So this is one example for the Polytechnic University, very, very detailed. It's on their website. Normally, the website there's icon saying that data protection, and then you click on that, you will see the privacy policy statement. Why we need that? Because Hong Kong, we have the data protection ordinance. Under the ordinance, there are 6 key principles. First one, you need to tell people how your data from third parties are collected, and then the purpose and the means to use. You need to ensure that you tell people how you make sure that these data are accurate and how you retain the information. You tell people the use of the information. Then you say whether you will be used solely by yourself or whether you will be shared by any third party. You need to make sure that you have security policy in hand to ensure that the data are protected. Openness of the data protection, that is to say, you need to tell people that in order to have access to that, you have the rights to how we can get the information, how we can make sure that the information retained by you are correct, and then we have the right to make correction. That is the 6th principle. Before signing a contract, I need to drink some water. What time is it now?
4:30.
Okay, it's about time. I will finish a bit early so that we can have some time for Q&A. Before signing a contract, the key message you need to understand is each deal is different. There's no such thing as a template for a contract. So people think that all the contracts are similar. We can get a template or we follow the contract we signed before. I tell you no, you will face the music eventually because each deal is different. Before you sign a contract, better to consult an experienced business lawyer in order to protect your interest and liability, and also to achieve a win-win commercial deal. You need to understand what is the consequence of breach of contract and then how any dispute of the under contract are to be resolved. So normally, I would say using a collaboration agreement as an example, I would say this contract will normally contain these provisions, just like what I mentioned, license agreement, the scope and the target of the cooperation, the territory of cooperation, because we can only, maybe we just work together in Hong Kong, but in mainland China we have another partner doing exactly the same thing. You need to classify the territorial scope of the cooperation. The duration of the cooperation, whether it's for good or whether it's just a 3-year term, how the technologies are to be used, and then whether this cooperation is an exclusive one. So these are things I don't want to repeat. I think I have mentioned it during the license agreement. So IPO was something very exciting. So why doing an IPO? People keep talking about IPO. So why should we do an IPO? First of all, the key point is, well, we raise money for future expansion of the company. So with money, we can expand our business and portfolio of our IP. Listed company status will enhance the credibilities and branding. You know, from time to time you see TV commercials saying that, oh, we are a listed company, and then will give people a sense of security that, well, big company, and then no worries about us. Provide liquidity to both investors and the founders, because we talk about the pre-IPO investment. People who invest in the company, they are investors. They want the financial return. So how can they achieve financial return? They sell the shares in the stock market, and then the share price increase, and then they will get a high return. So if you don't have a listed status of the company, so there's no market for the shares. So, but if the company is listed, the shares can be traded freely anytime in the stock market. Also, the founder of the company, you have worked really hard and in order to make the business a success. And then you want to have some money to buy property, and you want to buy cruise, you want to buy a Mercedes car. So what can you do? You sell the shares. You sell some shares from the market, and you get the money, and then you do whatever you want. The shares of this company can be used as a means to acquire new business. Instead of paying cash to buy a new business, this company can say, "Oh, I issue new shares of the company, and then to buy the business." So that can be used as a currency for acquisition. Improvement of financial position, of course, you have new money you raise, so you can improve the financial position. And also for the employees, we talk about these staff who get stock option, and then the listing status will enable the staff to sell the stock on the market, and they become billionaire. Hong Kong is an international financial market. There are obvious key advantages of listing in Hong Kong. I would just pick some of them to talk about, because Hong Kong is well known that we have a well-established legal system, and then we have a strong track record of attracting both Chinese and international companies to list in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong stock market has a very diverse investor base, because we don't have currency control. All investors from all over the world can buy shares in Hong Kong. And we have a very sound corporate governance standard. I want to talk about this Stock Connect, because in mainland China they have this foreign exchange control. So money cannot be flow freely from mainland China to Hong Kong to buy shares. But for some companies with market capitalization of more than 5 billion, that can have a chance to be on the list of the Stock Connect. And then under the special arrangement between the mainland Chinese government and the SAR government, those mainland Chinese investors can freely buy shares listed on those Hong Kong Connect lists. And then that will only be available for Hong Kong. That is to say, if a company lists in the USA or lists in the UK, those Chinese investors cannot invest in the company easily, because there's no special arrangement of the Stock Connect between the US Stock Exchange and the Chinese government. So this is a unique feature of the Hong Kong stock market. Listing, so of course, not every company can be listed. There are special requirements. Hong Kong, we now have a number of sets of different listing requirements. The requirement you show on the screen now is the traditional, the conventional route. That is to say, you have to have profit or at least some kind of revenue in order to be eligible for listing. So for the most common test is the profit test. That is to say, for the last 3 financial years, the company has to achieve net profit of 80 million Hong Kong. And then among these 3 years, in the last financial year before listing, the profit should be at least 35 million Hong Kong. And the aggregate profit for the 2 preceding years would be Hong Kong 4 million. So you would say, well, we are starting a company. It is too much for us because we can't be able to generate profit in the near future. But we need a lot of money to continue to do our R&D, to develop our business. So traditionally, there are two alternative tests that if you, the company, the size, in particular for the tech company, if the market believes that you can achieve a very high valuation of a company, you will still be able to list under the traditional list requirement. That you say the market cap and revenue test, and also the market cap, revenue, and cash flow test. These are very complex. I don't want to repeat. You just look at the table yourself. I'll give you 3 seconds. But this is not satisfactory. I will tell you some other solutions. Recently, since 2018, yes, there are lots of biotech companies in mainland China. So the Hong Kong Stock Exchange has introduced the Chapter 18A of the listing rules, which allows biotech company without revenue or without profit to be listed in Hong Kong. And then since 2018, there are about 50, more than 50 biotech company, pre-revenue biotech company listed on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. And then our firm has worked on some of them. And what are these biotech companies doing? These are you can see from this table that involve biological, pharmaceuticals, diagnostic, and then medical device. These are the very heat areas recently. So these are the eligibility requirement for the revenue biotech companies. In short, there would be, you should have at least one core product beyond concept stage. And also, the company has to be engaged in R&D for at least 12 months before listing. The primary reason for listing is to raise funds for further research and development for the core product. You have the registered patent for the core product. You also have pipelines of pharmaceutical or biological products. Also, you receive meaningful third-party investment from at least one sophisticated investor. And then the company cannot be too small. You should have at least 1.5 billion at the time of listing. Also, for the stock exchange, they have introduced another approach they call a SPAC. I'm not going to talk in detail today. SPAC means Special Purpose Acquisition Corporation. Then you say we have a blank check company with no business to be listed in Hong Kong, so that they can raise money on the Hong Kong stock market, and then use the money to acquire target, so that after the acquisition, we call the de-SPAC process, the target would become a listed company in Hong Kong. So, but so far we have only about 7 or 6 listed SPAC in Hong Kong, but none of them has achieved any de-SPAC. So it doesn't seem to be a very successful way. So I will skip that. And then for the high-tech company, with the traditional ways of IPO, that may still be too stringent. So last year, the stock exchange has introduced this called the 18C. It's a Chapter 18C added to the listing rules, and then to allow this specialist tech company to be listed in Hong Kong. So there are 5 types of specialist tech company for the time being. So I'm not going to repeat one by one, so please look at the table. Okay, does it fall within your area? If so, congratulations. We talk about the general principles on that. So these 5 types are not exclusive, but these are just examples for the time being. if because technology develop every day, so in the near future there may be other new technologies. The stock exchange will have the flexibility of including those technology to the list. In short, either your company is a commercial or pre-commercial company. So then you say whether you have already commercialized your product. If you have commercialized your product, the market capitalization requirement, that is the valuation requirement of the company is a bit lower, that is almost 6 billion. But for pre-commercial companies, the benchmark is high, 10 billion. Commercial companies mean you have the revenue, so you need to have at least Hong Kong dollar 250 million for last financial year. Pre-commercial company, of course, we don't have any revenue, but you need to demonstrate a credible path to achieve the minimum revenue requirement threshold in the future. Working capital requirement for the commercial companies, no, because they believe that because you have revenue, so you don't need to have working capital before you do listing. But for the commercial one, the selection must make sure that you have some money in your pocket. Otherwise, you don't totally rely on the IPO process in order financial company. So you have at least some money, and then we give you more money to make the company a better one. So the above three requirements are the key that I would like to highlight to you. So these are the other requirements I just let you read from the table yourself. So, conclusion for today, the takeaway for today, startups that manage to avoid legal pitfalls and missteps have a better chance of success than those who fail to appreciate legal risk and plans for them from the very beginning. So this is the key takeaway. Second takeaway, invest and build a sound legal framework at early stage to avoid big problem in the future. So that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chau is very fulfilling sharing. So who's going to ask the first question? It is a free of charge consultation if you're okay?
We just talked about the concept. It does not constitute formal legal advice, so you can put a headline first. Well, normally during the Q&A time, there's no one asking questions. But when I say this is the last question, people will start holding up their hands. So this is the last question.
Thank you, Charles. That's a great talk. I was wondering, is there another myth about lawyers? Are all of them dressed up so nicely like you?
Well, in fact, I don't believe lawyers dress like me then.
笑容嘅先，
Oh, really?
No. People dress very casually, particularly lawyers in mainland China. They just have a very short sleeve shirt.
But that's just to share a little bit personal perspective. I arrived in Hong Kong not long ago as a newcomer to this environment, less than 6 months. I think to deal with a person who has a first impression that's so professional, so tidy and it's trustworthy. I think it's in a way that helps we build some good level of trustworthiness. But this is not the real question I will ask.
Well, the thanks for tips to our interns. So
Okay.
this is something they
You
should
have
have.
a great team of, I think, people who know how to dress up nicely. That's important. But when you talk about IP, that caught a little bit of my thinking there, especially in life science, in biotech. I think the value of the IP also, to my understanding, evolves as the technology mature, getting more mature, and from the early concept stage to the application and translation to commercial stage. How the startup company, from a legal perspective, invest into IP strategy. They're expensive. To my knowledge, a lot of them, the majority of their day-to-day financial burden comes from IP aspect. But at the same time, they want at a certain point collaborate with big companies like us to co-develop. So I think IP is, to me, always a bit challenging to develop a strategy. Do you mind elaborating?
Yeah, well, first of all, I have to say I'm not an IP expert, so I know something about IP, but we have a specialist IP team, in particular handling these IP for life sciences company. But to me, as I mentioned in my presentation, I think the key, first of all, the key for the startup company is to make sure that the startup company owns the technology. So that is to say, you need to sign confidentiality agreement with employees so that they will not leak to another third party. And also for the innovation assignment, make sure that all these work developed by the staff will become property of the company instead of the personal property of the employee. So these are two basic stuff. You need to own the company needs to own the IP rights first. And then the second thing, the next second step would be you need to do the patent prosecution. If this is something really innovative, you have to register with the patent registry. And then how to prosecute a patent is an art. It's not a science because you need to write clearly. And then if you just write something very generically, so that would be rejected by the patent registry because. But if that is too specific, that will disclose too much information to the external party because people can check from the public information. So how we strike a balance to ensure the tricky or the secretive point of the technology is covered by the application. I think that would be the key. So that's why we have a specialist patent attorney helping companies to draft. Those people, they have the technology or science background. So if you ask me to draft, I don't because I don't have the background. But before they become lawyers, they study science. Some of them even have a PhD in biochemistry or engineering before, so that they have the technical knowledge to understand what exactly the company is doing, so that with this idea they can make a judgment how to write it in the best approach in order to protect the company. So that's why that's echo my say all lawyers are the same, totally not, because take this as an example. For me, you ask me to help you to draft a patent prosecution, I would surely draft a very lousy stuff, and then you will sue me somehow in the future because I should have missed some key points. So for those who have the technical knowledge, would be the best person to have with them. I think that is the second point I would like to say. And then on the third point about these external cooperation, I think the first and second point would be to form the foundation of external cooperation. Because if the company doesn't own the patent, doesn't have the patent register, so who is going to work with you? So I think these are the two foundations, form the foundation. And then for the external cooperation, I have briefly mentioned about the key terms and issues to note. I think that is a very big topic, but I have to say, some small company may not have the resources. I also mentioned this earlier. Doesn't have the resources, the financial resources, the manpower, and also the synergies, because the large company, your technology may complement some products and technologies of some another large corporation. So you work with them. Those big companies because they're very big, in order for them to develop something that would be costly and time consuming, because more bureaucratic, so but now you have something ready, so he just work with you, so that he get a benefit from you, and then you don't need to you don't need to get 10 say PhD to help you to do the business. You don't need to raise a lot of money from private investors, so that they provide the money, you provide the technology, and that's a win-win situation. And then in return, they give you some money, normally by way of say the stage payment, different stage, and also if the company if the product has become very successful in the future, you'll be able to share the profit of that thing. So that would be a huge amount of money. So I think the founders of companies should take a more open mind. Frankly, some people will believe that, oh, this is my innovation. I want to do it myself. I'm confident that I'm doing myself. But the reality is, maybe you can do it yourself, but it will take a longer time. And then if you work with other people, the chance of success may be higher, and then it will take a shorter time. And then you may be able to have higher return, because the big company, they have very well-established sales network, so you can rely on the sales network to help you to sell the product. If you sell it yourself, you need people who have spent 20 years to build a network. Then do you have the resources to build that network? Even if you have the resources, are you sure that you can do it as good as them? This is a big question mark. Hi, Alex.
Thank you. Actually, your previous answer makes me really need to ask you this following question. What do you say with, so when we're looking at the startup ecosystem of both Hong Kong and the US, you see a different maturity level and a different way that smaller startups do grow and are helped to grow without them being pushed to like make that, talk to that guy, talk to that guy, talk to that company, sell to that company, license to that company, let's do it faster, easier, cheaper, well not cheaper, but less risky. And I understand this is a risk aversion conversation. But what do you say with the counter argument where we say, well, listen, sometimes corporations can't do it just right. That's why you bring new people, that's why you bring new startups, because they're ready to take riskier bets that can potentially lead to more, a higher value in the end, right? So, to that question is, how do you balance those? What you said previously, like, and do you think that maybe there's Hong Kong should be slightly more risk friendly to show a bigger global footprint in the startup ecosystem? I mean, thanks.
Alex, this is a really good question. Well, I have said in the past 20 or 30 years, if you ask me to name whether there's any successful startup in Hong Kong, well, I can only think about the Shunfeng, the delivery company, but its success is not in Hong Kong, but it has developed a big network in mainland China. And other than that, I really don't have any idea at all.
Google.
Yeah, but it's sold to a Chinese company. So we haven't seen many successful cases. It could be very discouraging because we are more startup in Hong Kong. But the disappointing fact is that in the past 2 or 3 decades, we haven't seen real Hong Kong startup grow up gradually and then become world-class company. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that yet. So I would say that like in other countries like the United States, these Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, these giant companies, they start with as a startup at the very beginning. You know, Apple started at a garage or a very company. Even Alibaba, they have a group of people working in a small office under a teacher. I think Hong Kong has to catch up this international trend, and I think on the technology innovation, unfortunately we don't have some ecosystem of people with this science background. Because in the past, I have to say, all the good students they take medicine, law or finance. Pure science R&D is not a choice for Hong Kong students. At least in the past 5 decades, I have to say. So I think we need at least a whole generation in order to change this. We do hope that Hong Kong has started picking up that, but I think we have a long way to catch up. Yeah, in order on that risk thing, well, I get the impression that the investors in Hong Kong, they are very conservative. As I just talked to, and then he said, well, we will prefer investing in secondary markets. I think that is the common view of many Hong Kong investors. I think, but it is a chicken and egg thing. If we have good technology, good prospect of the company, well, that means good opportunities for these VC, PE circle. So I think everyone has to work really hard. Entrepreneur, scientists, think out of the box, think something attractive, which people in the States, people in Europe has not yet done that before. We do it here. And then with a big market in mainland China, I think that will help the company to succeed. I'm not sure if I can answer your question from a legal perspective.
No, thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Hi, Charles. Sorry about my voice. So I understand you've done quite a few of Chapter 18 leads. So I want to know more about what are the challenges that you face answering stock exchange comments. What are the key concerns on Chapter 18 leads?
The stock exchange, I think the regulatory philosophy has changed a bit in the recent years. The standard has become quite stringent. So for 18B, I think well, in our case we have a case that has already passed the listing hearing. But we spent quite a lot of time dealing with the regulators. I think one of the concern is the qualification of the promoters, because the stock exchange requires the promoters, they should have strong investment management experience. So those investment management experience has to be acquired from managing investment portfolio. So although it says that people with other skills may be considered, but in reality they didn't consider. For example, those who are very well connected can help to source project for acquisition SPAC. The stock exchange does not require that. Do not believe that they are the sound requirement. Also for people, and also as you know, they require at least one corporation that with the license either have a type 6 corporate finance advisory license or type 9 asset management license to be a promoter. For the type 9 asset manager, they pay a lot of emphasis on the AUM, the value of asset under management. So if the asset of under the management of the company is not that large, the stock exchange just believes that you are not good enough. And then also for the individual promoters, if you claim yourself has investment management experience, they need you to quantify your achievement. For example, your fund, the performance of the fund, what's the index. So, but if for a PE fund, the company has not yet listed, so how can I make a judgment on whether this company is successful or not? So they keep asking different types of questions. It's too much. I don't have anything to add.
I think that because this listing regime is US dollar in Hong Kong, and this listing regime is new to Hong Kong, and they're also picking up because we filed the one of the first 5 listing applications to the stock exchange, and while we are learning, and they are learning as well, so they do not want to copy wholesale the US versions, and they wanted at the same time to develop their own versions, but they are exploring as well. So they, in the process, they asked some questions that might not be really commercial, but I guess in the long run they will do better.
If there's any more applications.
Hi Charles, first of all, thanks a lot for your overview of all these legal requirements for startup. I think I'd like to echo and kind of go back a bit to the thing you said earlier about partnership and how small startups can kind of leverage larger corporations to help them grow. And from my experience, I think one of the things that I had some difficulty in terms of partnership is how do we kind of legally structure the partnership. I think first of all, for young startups, I think there's different kind of definition for large corporation. There are kind of medium corporations that for startups, there are some corporations that are too large for a startup to approach, and there are some medium corporations that are just kind of right at our current stage. But then we want also at the same time to not limit our growth to this medium corporation. And one of I think the kind of partnership that I had some experience with is in terms of joint venture, just creating a whole different kind of incorporated entity for specifically for the partnership. But when we have this kind of joint venture, then we have to have extra costs, and we have to think about if we have some kind of IP rights that we develop from this new technology, who will own the IP rights? Is it us, the original startup, or the new joint venture company? And this kind of things kind of makes it complicated, I think, in terms of maintaining control plus growing. So do you have any kind of advice on how do we structure partnerships that allow us to have the technology control and make it simpler for partnerships?
Well, there's no standard answer to the questions because, as I mentioned, each deal is different. So I think it really depends on the respective bargaining power of 2 parties, and then how keen you want to work with that partner, or how keen the partner would like to work with you. So I think this is commercial negotiation is an art, it's not a science. So that's why you need lawyers that with experience and also with technical knowledge to help you, because when we have done a lot of these type of transactions before. So I'm a corporate lawyer by training, but we have our IP lawyers also joining the project. So we're working together. So I will take care of on the corporate side. So just like the control thing, we think about this maybe the board of the joint venture company who has the how many seats to be allocated to 2 parties. What matters has to be unanimously agreed. When will the company can go into liquidation? If the company wants to license the technology to a third party, so who can do that? So I think these are just a number of examples that the lawyers will give you things to consider, and then we need to think about more comprehensively. Also, you talk about the IP rights. So you made a very good point. So in fact we are having some dispute in one of the ongoing case, that is on the innovation, the development of the existing technology, we license technology to them, and then who owns the improvement rights. That one has not been clearly drafted at the outset, so I think that needs to dispute. So I think these questions, if you are willing to spend a bit more effort at the outset, that can be, you can avoid a lot of big problems in the future.
Maybe I ask a question, Mr. Chau.
The lady, okay, so
I'm just curious about IP sharing or how IPs can be structured to incentivize more innovation across different parties, because often maybe an invention or innovation is come up with during an informal discussion amongst, like, I don't know, 20 people at a dinner party. So in that situation, how do you think, like, people can be incentivized to keep brainstorming instead of, like, you know, withholding their ideas or creativity from each other?
Well, I think, if I'm speaking from the perspective of the company, of course I need to make sure that all the rights, all the innovation, all the ideas of the employees and the partners would goes to become the asset of the company. But at the same time, as I mentioned, we have this incentive system. This stock option and restricted shares to the employees. You can't be that specific, saying that, to quantify how you contribute a bit more on the development of the IP, and then so that you get more. I think that will be reflected in your salary and also your stock option. But I think for the protection of the company and also for the longer term development of the company has to make sure that the ownership of all its innovation will belong to the company. Otherwise, if there's a third party who wants to cooperate with the company, who should that person talk to? And then he needs to make sure that, I talk to the companies own the IP. Otherwise, when the product has become very successful in the future, and then the employee come out and say, no, I should own a part of this product because I contribute this and that to the company. So that is very undesirable to both parties. So unfortunately, I think the IP rights has to go to the company.
Yeah. So, Mr. Chau, we have a lot of participants in here. So, will you please give some advice to them to be specific? When should they find an offer?
Well, I think there's no perfect law firm. Well, there's no one law firm that can cater for all the needs. I don't think it's just unrealistic. But I think when you choose law firm, you consider the experience, the track record of the lawyer. I think that is the most important thing. Because legal business, I think, is a more personal business. You deal with lawyers. So of course, the law firm, they have brand, but not all the lawyers in the same law firm are the same. Even the lawyers in the same different departments. We have our different emphasis of practice. For example, for our IP team, some of our IP lawyers, they do more about this life science work, but some IP lawyers do about more the engineering side of IP work. So you need to choose the right person with an experience. And then another thing is, just like making friends, you need to make sure that you can work well with that person. Some people may be very knowledgeable, very famous, but have a very strong, very strange character that you will not be able to talk to them. Or his presentation skills is very poor. You don't understand what he's talking about. So in that case, you can't work with them, right? And then lastly, you need to consider about the fees. Well, of course, as I mentioned, legal services are not cheap. Some are more expensive, some are less expensive. So it really depends on your needs. For example, you won't have fine dining every day, right? You go to this cafe just to make sure that you're hungry, and then you eat it, and then sometimes for more important dinner, you go to a 5-star hotel or Michelin star hotel for that. So I'm not suggesting that you need to get the best or the best offer, best offer for doing everything, but some more straightforward thing you can consider the price more important, because that can be done by people charging you less, but for some more complex work, that just like your wedding banquet, you won't have your wedding banquet at Tanzania, right? You're seeing an important, you're meeting your future in-law parents, so you will go to a decent restaurant. I think that's the analogy. So it really depends on your needs. For more important matters, I really suggest you be more careful in the selection. Otherwise, you will face the music in the future. Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, thank you. So on behalf of the Why Not Foundation, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Chau and all of you for your participation physically and virtually today. We have the brand new until 6, so if you want to have a further conversation with Mr. Chau, please say so. Thank you and goodbye.